I did not cry. I did not raise my voice. I just looked at him. This man I had spent 11 years of my life loving, and I thought, you have no idea what is about to happen to you. It was a Thursday afternoon in late October. The kind of day in Vancouver where the rain comes sideways and everyone walks with their shoulders hunched up around their ears. I was at the Shoppers on Robson picking up my prescription when I heard his laugh first. I would know that laugh anywhere. Loud, a little too loud, the laugh of a man who needs everyone in the room to know he is having a good time. I turned around, and there he was, my ex-husband, standing at the pharmacy counter with a basket of vitamins and a new haircut, looking like a man who believed he had won something. He saw me at the same moment I saw him. For a second, neither of us moved, then he smiled, and not the good kind. Well, he said, loud enough that the woman behind me shifted uncomfortably. Look at you. I said nothing. I had picked up my prescription and I was holding it in both hands and I was very, very still. You look tired, he said, taking a step toward me. Are you doing okay, managing on your own? There was something performative about it, like he was playing a scene he had rehearsed. I noticed he had a gym bag over one shoulder and he was wearing the kind of athletic clothes that cost $300 to look like you just rolled out of bed. He looked like a man in the middle of reinventing himself. I said, I'm fine, thank you. He tilted his head. The smile got wider. You know, he said, I don't think I ever told you this, but leaving was the best decision I ever made. He paused just long enough to let that settle. I've never been happier. My life actually has direction now. You know what the difference is? I waited. My girlfriend is pregnant, he said. 8 weeks. And it's a boy. He let that land. Then, some women are just built for that, and some women, he gave a small, almost apologetic shrug. They're just not, are they? I looked at him for a long moment, then I said congratulations, and I walked out of the store. I sat in my car in the parking garage on Thurlow for probably 4 minutes without starting the engine. The rain was loud on the roof. I could hear my own breathing. Here is what he did not know. Standing there in that Shoppers with his gym bag and his new haircut and his news about the baby boy. My best friend, the woman he had left me for, the woman who was now carrying his child, had called me 6 days earlier. She had been crying so hard I could barely understand her. And she had told me everything. Let me go back. My ex-husband and I met when I was 26, and working as a junior accountant at a mid-sized firm in Burnaby. He was a financial advisor. We met at an industry mixer, which tells you something about who we both were at 26. The kind of people who went to industry mixers on a Tuesday night and called it networking. He was charming in that very specific way that takes a while to see through. Warm on the surface. Certain of himself in a way that I mistook for confidence. It took me years to understand the difference between confidence and the need to always be the smartest person in the room. We married when I was 28. We bought a semi-detached in East Van when I was 30. The mortgage was split evenly because I insisted on it. I was meticulous about money. It was what I did for a living. He found that quality alternately admirable and irritating depending on the day. My best friend, I will call her that because that is what I believed she was, had been in my life since university. We had met in our second year at UBC in a statistics class we were both failing, and we had kept each other afloat through every difficult thing that followed. Exams, bad relationships, a bout of anxiety that knocked me sideways at 24, the death of my father. She was there. She was always there. When I married, she stood beside me at the ceremony. When I miscarried at 31, she drove me home from the hospital and sat with me on the bathroom floor for an hour without saying a single word. I did not know, for a long time, what was happening between her and my husband. I found out the way most people find out. Not through some dramatic confrontation, but through an accumulation of small things that eventually became impossible to ignore. A text notification I caught by accident. A story that didn't line up. The way he started going to the gym on Sunday mornings when he had never once gone to the gym on a Sunday morning in 11 years. The way she started having reasons not to come over. When I finally asked him directly, he did not deny it. He seemed almost relieved. He told me it had been going on for 8 months. He told me that he had been unhappy for a long time. He told me that she made him feel alive in a way that, and here he actually used this phrase, our dynamic had stopped doing. I asked him if he loved her. He said yes. I asked him to leave. He did. The divorce took 7 months. We had a lawyer each, and we negotiated through them, because I could not sit across a table from him and maintain the composure I needed. Our financial lives were entangled in the way that 11 years of shared living creates. The house, the joint accounts, an investment portfolio we had built together, his business which I had quietly co-signed a line of credit for 3 years earlier when he was expanding. That line of credit. I want you to remember that detail. He moved in with her immediately. They were by all accounts happy. My colleagues stopped mentioning it when they saw my face. My mother called every Sunday. My work kept me functional. I threw myself into files and spreadsheets and the kind of focused, granular attention that accounting rewards, and I did not think about them more than I could help it. I was not technically infertile. The miscarriage at 31 had been followed by 2 more, the last at 33. My doctor had referred me to a specialist. There were options. There were always options. But my husband, my ex-husband, had made clear, in those final months, that he did not want to pursue options. He wanted something that came easily. He wanted a woman for whom things would simply work. That was how he said it. Not cruelly, exactly. Just with a kind of finality that was perhaps worse than cruelty. She was 4 years younger than me. She had no fertility history. She was, apparently, exactly what he had decided he needed. I tried not to think about it. And then 6 days before I ran into him at the Shoppers, she called me. I almost didn't answer. I had not spoken to her since the night I told her, very quietly, that I needed her to not contact me for a while. That had been 8 months ago. I had needed the distance the way you need distance from anything that burns. But I answered. Because even after everything, some part of me was still her friend. She was crying within seconds, full, gasping crying, the kind that makes it hard to understand what someone is saying. It took me several minutes to piece together what she was telling me. She was pregnant. I knew that part. What I did not know was this. The baby was not my ex-husband's. There had been someone else. A man she had met through a mutual friend at a function in Whistler about 6 months into her relationship with my husband. It had been, she said, a mistake. A brief thing. She had ended it quickly. But she had not been careful and now she was pregnant. And she had gone for an early paternity test privately. Because she needed to know and the results had come back, and the baby was not my husband's. She had not told him. She was calling me because she did not know what to do, and because, and this is the part that took my breath away, she said I was still the person she trusted most in the world. I sat with that for a long time. Have you told him? I asked. No, she said. I don't know how. You need to tell him, I said. You know that. I know, she said, and you need to tell the father. She was quiet for a moment. Then, it's complicated, he's a lawyer, he has a family. That's not your problem to manage, I said. That's his. She cried some more. I let her. I did not comfort her the way I would have once. I was kind, because I am not capable of being unkind to someone who is falling apart, but I was not warm. There was a difference, and I think she felt it. After we hung up, I went and stood at my kitchen window for a long time, looking out at the alley behind my building, at the wet leaves stuck to the pavement, at the dim yellow light from the unit above the dry cleaner. I thought about what this meant. I thought about what it would change. And then I went to my desk and I opened the file I had been quietly, carefully building for the past 4 months. You see, I am an accountant, a good one. And when my ex-husband had asked me, 3 years ago, to co-sign that business line of credit, I had done what any meticulous accountant would do before signing anything. I had read everything. I had tracked everything. I had kept copies of everything. In the 18 months following our separation, while I was processing my grief and throwing myself into work, I had started to notice things, irregularities, small at first, the kind of discrepancies that most people would attribute to sloppiness. But I had worked in financial audit long enough to know that sloppiness and concealment can look identical until you pull on the right thread. He had been using client funds, not dramatically, not in the way that makes headlines immediately, but methodically and over time. Moving money from discretionary accounts, he managed into holding structures that were, on paper, arm's length, but were, in practice, controlled by him. Some of it had funded a property that was now in her name. Some of it had funded the renovation on the home they shared. The numbers, when you laid them out correctly, told a story that was very clear. I had spent 4 months building that story. I had done it alone, working evenings, because I was certain enough to be careful and careful enough not to rush. 3 weeks before I ran into him at the pharmacy, I had taken what I had to a securities lawyer I trusted. She had reviewed everything and told me it was serious. She had referred me to a contact at the BC Securities Commission. I had met with that contact the following week. The file was already in motion. I had not said a word to anyone. So when he stood there in that Shoppers and told me that some women are built for certain things, and some women simply are not, I knew what was coming for him. I knew the exact shape of it, and I was calm in the way that you can only be calm when you are not afraid of what happens next. My mother always said that patience was the longest revenge. I used to think that was just something she said. Now I understand it completely. The call from his lawyer came on a Wednesday morning in early December, not to me directly, to my lawyer, who called me immediately afterward. The BC Securities Commission had moved. My ex-husband's accounts had been frozen pending investigation. The firm he worked for had been notified. His registrations were suspended. My lawyer said, "Are you sitting down?" I was already sitting down. I was at my desk with a coffee and a file I had been reviewing, and I had been, in some ways, waiting for this call for months. She told me that the preliminary numbers being investigated were significant, somewhere in the range of $600,000 moved over approximately 4 years. The property in my former best friend's name was flagged as a potentially fraudulent transfer. "What happens to the property?" I asked. "It will depend on the investigation," my lawyer said, "but in cases like this, assets acquired using misappropriated funds are typically subject to clawback." I thought about the property. I thought about the baby boy she was carrying. I thought about the man who was the baby's actual father. A married lawyer somewhere in this city who did not yet know his life was about to become significantly more complicated. "Okay," I said. "Thank you for calling." I hung up and looked out my office window at the gray December sky over Burrard Street, and I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not happiness, exactly. Something quieter than that. Something that felt like the world being correctly ordered again. He called me that evening. Not through a lawyer, directly from his personal number, which I had not blocked because some part of me had expected this. I answered. "You did this," he said. The charm was completely gone. His voice was flat and tight. "You went to the commission. You reported me." "I reported financial irregularities I had documentation of," I said. "Yes. We were married for 11 years, he said. "We were." "And you did this." I let the silence sit for a moment, then I said, "You told me in October that some women are built for certain things. You were right. I'm built for numbers. I'm very good at numbers." A pause. "You should have remembered that before you spoke to me the way you did." He hung up. I put my phone face down on my desk and went back to my file. The investigation took several months. During that time, the property in her name was frozen. She was interviewed as part of the process. Interviewed, I learned later from my lawyer, as a potential co-beneficiary of fraudulent assets, though she was ultimately not charged. She was, however, required to vacate the property pending resolution. She called me one more time, in February. She was not crying this time. She sounded very tired. "Did you know?" she asked. "When you told me to tell him about the baby, did you know what was coming?" "I knew the investigation was underway," I said. "I didn't know the timeline." "The baby's father," she said. "He's denying everything. He won't take my calls." I did not say anything to that. There was nothing helpful I could offer. "I don't have anywhere to go," she said. "You have families in Kelowna," I said. "You've mentioned them. I think you should go there for a while." She was quiet. "I'm sorry," she said. I know it doesn't do anything. But I am. "I know you are," I said, and that was the last time we spoke. My ex-husband's case was ultimately resolved through a negotiated settlement with the BCSC and a parallel criminal process that his lawyer handled. He did not go to prison. That outcome is rarer than people expect in these cases, but he was permanently barred from working in the securities industry in Canada, ordered to pay back a substantial portion of the misappropriated funds, and levied a significant personal fine. The legal fees alone, I was told secondhand, had wiped out most of his personal savings. In the divorce settlement, which was revisited in light of the new financial disclosures, my lawyer successfully argued that my co-signature on the business line of credit, a liability I had assumed in good faith, entitled me to a portion of what was recovered. It was not a windfall. It was a correct accounting of what had been owed to me. I used it to pay off what remained on a small condo I had bought in New Westminster after the separation. Nothing dramatic. Just a home that was mine and nothing else's, on a street where I could hear the SkyTrain in the distance, and there was a good Korean place on the corner that I ordered from on Friday evenings. I thought about him sometimes. Less and less as time went on. I thought about the way he had looked in that Shoppers, so certain that he had come out ahead, so certain that he was on the right side of the ledger. He had spent years managing other people's money and apparently never understood the most basic principle of accounting. Eventually, everything has to balance. I thought about her too. I heard through a mutual acquaintance that she had gone to Kelowna and had the baby there at her sister's. A boy, as she had always said. I hope he is healthy, I genuinely do. Children do not choose the circumstances they are born into, and that baby has done nothing wrong. As for the father, the married lawyer, I do not know what happened there. That is someone else's story to live through. Mine ended on a Tuesday morning in April. I was standing in my kitchen in New Westminster with a coffee, watching the light come through the window the way it does in spring in this city. That particular pale gold that feels like it has been earned after all those months of gray. My phone buzzed. It was my boss, asking if I was interested in leading the new audit practice the firm was building. It would be a promotion. It would be a significant one. I set my coffee down. I typed back, "Yes, I'm interested." Then I picked my coffee back up and stood there in that pale April light and thought, I built this. Not despite everything that happened, not in spite of what was taken from me, but because of the person I had always been, the person who kept records and read everything carefully and did not, under any circumstances, sign anything without understanding exactly what she was putting her name on. Some women are built for certain things. He was right about that. He just had no idea which woman he was talking to.